They say fate doesn't warn you. It just throws you into a moment so violent. You don't realize your life has changed until the world stops spinning. Tonight, it wasn't flames. It wasn't an explosion. It was the sound of metal screaming across wet asphalt that pulled a single dad straight into someone else's destiny. If you're here, subscribe, because what happens next feels impossible. The rain had been steady all night, the kind that makes streetlights look like ghosts hovering behind the glass. Ryan drove slowly, tired, already late. Aria was waiting at home with her science project, probably fighting sleep even though he told her not to. He promised he'd be back in time. He wasn't. A sudden flash of headlights blindsided him from the left. A luxury sedan hydroplaned across the lane, hit the median, bounced and flipped. Once. Twice. Then landed upside down with a violent metallic crunch that sent shards of glass flying across the empty boulevard. No fire, no explosion. Just the sickening silence that follows a crash so brutal, even the rain holds its breath. Ryan slammed the brakes. People on the sidewalk froze. The sedan's hazard lights blinked weakly. Steam hissed from the cracked radiator. The rear wheel spun uselessly in the air, whining like a hurt animal. Ryan's chest tightened. "Someone call an ambulance!" he shouted. No one moved. He didn't think. He ran. The closer he got, the louder everything became. The ticking of hot metal cooling in the rain, the soft hiss of leaking fluid, the faint buzzing of a damaged battery. And then he heard it, a faint, broken sound from inside the crushed window. Someone was alive. He dropped to his knees beside the shattered passenger window. Rainwater poured inside the overturned car, mixing with broken glass and blood. A delicate hand pushed through the crack, trembling, reaching, begging. "Help!" Her voice was barely there. The woman inside was trying to lift her head, but the seatbelt held her in an impossible angle. Her white dress, expensive, elegant, was torn at the shoulder. Her hair stuck to her cheek with blood and rain. Ryan pressed his hands against the frame. "It's okay," he said firmly. "I'm here. I've got you." He braced himself and pulled. Metal groaned. He pulled again. Nothing. A young man from the sidewalk finally ran to help, grabbing the mangled door. "One more time," Ryan said through clenched teeth. They pulled. The door snapped open with a jolt. Rain rushed inside the car like a wave. Ryan crawled halfway in, unbuckled her seatbelt, and gently slid her toward him. She winced in agony, fingers gripping his wrist with desperate strength. "I know," he whispered. "I know. Stay with me." He dragged her out carefully, trying not to jolt her neck or ribs. Once free, he lifted her into his arms. Her body was cold, wet, shaking. Her face pressed against his shoulder as he carried her across the road. Someone shouted that the ambulance was on the way. Ryan didn't hear them. All he heard was her breathing, frantic, uneven, losing rhythm. He set her down in the passenger seat of his truck, covered her with his jacket, and tried to steady her head. Her eyelids fluttered, her lips parted. And then she whispered the last name he expected to hear from a stranger. "Aria!" Ryan froze. His daughter's name, falling from the lips of a woman he had never met. "How do you—" he tried to ask, but her eyes rolled back. Her body went limp. Her head fell against his chest, and Ryan realized this wasn't a crash. It was the beginning of a truth that had been waiting years to finally break free. They say a dying person speaks only the truth. But when she opened her eyes, the first thing she said wasn't, "Where am I?" or "Am I safe?" Her first word was, "Aria," his daughter's name, whispered with familiarity. "If fate brought you here, subscribe, and let's step into the storm together." The ICU was too bright, too quiet, too heavy with antiseptic and truth. Ryan stood outside the glass room where she lay, bandaged, breathing, alive because he refused to walk away. Every few seconds, the monitor beeped softly like a heartbeat trying to remember its rhythm. He didn't know her, he had never met her, and yet she had said the one name that lived at the center of his chest, Aria. He waited until the doctor finally nodded. "You can speak to her," the doctor said. "Slow. She's still processing." processing. Ryan wasn't sure he was. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Maya Alvarez, billionaire, boardroom legend, woman pulled from fire, opened her eyes as if she had been waiting for him. Recognition didn't bloom slowly. It hit her instantly. "You!" she whispered. Ryan's jaw clenched. "We've never met." She swallowed. Her voice was raw, smoky, bruised. "No, but I know who you are." He didn't sit. He didn't move closer. He just asked the one question that had been strangling him since the crash. "You said my daughter's name. Why?" Maya blinked fast. Too fast. Like someone hiding tears behind them. I didn't mean to," she said. "Try again," Ryan replied quietly. "People in burning cars don't pray to random names." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the truth was sitting there, trembling in her gaze. "I've seen her before," she whispered. "Not in person. In a report." Ryan froze. "A what?" "A file," she said. Her voice cracked. "A case file. A tragedy file." A coldness spread through Ryan like an old scar reopening. "What tragedy?" he demanded. Her fingers gripped the blanket. "The logistics firm that hit you," she whispered. "The one that hit your brother, Eli Hale." Every bone in Ryan's body locked. She continued, barely holding herself together. "There was a report after the accident, every detail, the victims, the families, witness statements, photographs." She swallowed hard. "And one picture was of a little girl crying on the sidewalk, held in someone's arms. That girl was your daughter, Aria." Ryan's heart punched against his ribs. The night his brother died, the night his world cracked. Aria had been there, just a toddler, crying, confused. He remembered the chaos, the ambulance, the screaming. He didn't remember the cameras, but someone had filed it. Someone had stored it. Someone had read it. And that someone was lying in this hospital bed. Maya lowered her gaze. "I shouldn't have opened that file. I shouldn't have let it stay in the system. But when I saw her face, I never forgot." Her voice thinned. "I don't think I ever will." Ryan felt heat crawl up his spine. "So you knew my family," he said quietly. "No," she whispered. "Not your family. Just your loss." "And what does that make you?" he asked. Maya's voice broke. "Someone who's been carrying the truth you deserve to know, but never got." Ryan didn't speak, didn't move, because her next words would either shatter him or set the rest of the story on fire. Her lips trembled. "There's more," she said. Ryan's breath stopped, and before he could ask, "What?" the monitor beeped sharply. Her hand pressed to her ribs, her breath hitched, and the truth she tried to say was swallowed by pain. They say fate doesn't knock. It crashes into your life at full speed and leaves you standing in front of truths you never asked for. If you're still here, subscribe, because this is where the story stops being about a burning car and becomes about a burning past. Maya's monitor beeped hard, fast, urgent, and nurses rushed in like a wave breaking through the tension. Ryan stepped back, fists clenched, watching her body curl from pain she tried so hard to hold back. "Ma'am, slow breaths," a nurse said. But Maya's eyes, they never left him, even through the pain. Her lips shaped one word. "Wait," and then her head fell back against the pillow. The sedation kicked in. The room dimmed. The storm inside Ryan didn't. He stood there long after they pushed him out of the ICU, long after the hallway emptied, long after the doctor reassured him she was stable but needed rest. He barely heard any of it. Only one sound replayed in his skull, a tragedy report, a picture of Aria. Eli's name in a file she had no right to read, and the worst words of all, "There's more." Ryan walked out into the cold night. The rain had slowed to a quiet drizzle, tapping the pavement like someone whispering a warning. He leaned against his truck, jaw tight, knuckles white. What was Maya hiding? What more could there possibly be? He knew the tragedy. He lived it. He buried his brother. He held Aria while she cried for an uncle she would never understand she lost. What else was there? His mind spiraled until footsteps approached. Dad! Ryan froze. He turned. Aria stood there holding her little unicorn umbrella, rain boots splashing in puddles, jacket zipped crooked, hair in a messy side ponytail. Behind her was his neighbor Rosa, waving apologetically from her car. She insisted, Rosa said. I'm sorry. She woke up and... But Aria ran straight to him and wrapped her arms tight around his waist. Daddy, she whispered, I had a bad dream. Ryan's heart cracked at the edges. He kneeled and hugged her back, holding on longer than normal. It was loud, she said softly. Fire loud. He froze. Fire. Before he could answer, she leaned back, her tiny hands holding his face. Daddy, why do you look sad? He swallowed. I'm okay, he lied. Aria frowned, studying his eyes with the strange wisdom children have when they love someone too much. You're not, she whispered. He almost broke right there. But instead, he picked her up. Let's go home, he said. They drove in silence, the tires whispering on wet asphalt. Aria hummed under her breath, something soft, something almost comforting. But halfway home, she spoke again. Daddy? Yeah? Was the lady you carried hurt very bad? His breath caught. How do you know about that? Aria shrugged. I saw you. When you ran into the fire, I saw you through the window. He closed his eyes. She wasn't supposed to see that. She wasn't supposed to see flames touching her father's jacket, the way his hands shook afterward, the way he almost collapsed from adrenaline. You should have been asleep, he said quietly. I woke up, she said simply. A beat of silence. Then, Daddy, what was her name? Ryan hesitated. He didn't want Maya Alvarez anywhere near his daughter's world. Not her guilt, not her secrets, not the tragedy she'd read behind locked corporate doors. But children don't give you choices. They said her name at the hospital, he finally said. Maya Alvarez. Aria repeated it gently, as if testing the syllables. Maya. She looked out the window and whispered, I know that name. Ryan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. What do you mean you know that name? Aria didn't look at him. I think I saw it before, she said. A long time ago. He felt cold. Where? Aria tapped her forehead. In the picture, the one with Uncle Eli. Ryan's blood ran ice. What picture? Aria hesitated, then pointed. In your toolbox. The old drawer. The one you never open. His heart slammed against his ribs. That drawer held things from the night Eli died. Notes, police cards, witness lists, things he kept buried, things he never showed his daughter, things he never wanted to see again. Aria shouldn't know any of it, but she did. He parked the truck, lifted her out, carried her to bed, kissed her forehead. Waited until she fell asleep. Then he walked to the garage, turned on the dim bulb, and pulled open the rusted drawer. There it was, a folder, a photograph, a name, not hers, not Eli's, another one, burned into the corner of a corporate watermark. Luminex Global Holdings. CEO, Maya Alvarez. His vision blurred. The file wasn't just a tragedy report. It wasn't just archived history. It was hers, her company, her system, her signature. She had known about his family long before the crash. And suddenly, Ryan understood something awful. Maya Alvarez didn't whisper Aria's name because she remembered a picture. She whispered it because she had been carrying guilt for years. And because somewhere in that file, somewhere behind redacted lines and corporate ink, was the more she tried to confess before the pain shut her down. Ryan stared at her signature and whispered, What the hell did you do? They say the truth doesn't knock gently. It barges in. It tears open the doors you've nailed shut, and it waits until you're finally too tired to keep running from it. If you're ready, subscribe, because this is the part where the past stops whispering and starts screaming. Ryan stood in the garage, the single dim bulb flickering above him like a dying heartbeat. The old metal drawer was open, the smell of rust and wet concrete wrapped around him. And in his hand was the file he swore he'd never look at again. Luminex Global Holdings. CEO, Maya Alvarez. The woman he had pulled from a burning car. The woman who whispered his daughter's name. The woman who claimed there was more. His thumb brushed the edge of the folder. It felt like holding a loaded weapon. He opened it. The first page was the original police report. He knew it by heart. He'd lived it. Eli Hale, age 28. Deceased. Struck by a delivery van at the intersection of Eastwood and Pine. Driver under the influence. Driver employed by a third-party contractor. He flipped the page. The next sheet was filled with names and internal notes. Memos he'd never seen. Contractor recommended by Luminex Executive Board. Background check waived due to timeline pressure. Driver history flagged. Ignored. Senior oversight, M. Alvarez. The words blurred. M. Alvarez. Maya's signature in the margin. Ink so clean, so confident. It made him sick. She wasn't just connected. She wasn't just informed. She wasn't just aware. She was involved. His breath grew shallow. He kept reading. Another memo. Incident triggered PR risk. CEO advised documentation be archived, not disclosed. Another. Recommendation, seal family details for liability control. Note, child on scene, minor female. Name, Aria Hale. Ryan slammed the file shut, chest heaving. She had known. She had known everything. The night his brother died, the night his daughter cried, the reason his world shattered, and she hadn't said a word. He grabbed his keys. He didn't care that it was midnight. He didn't care about the rain starting again. He didn't care if the hospital had protocols. He was going to see Maya, not for answers, for truth. He drove like the storm inside him was pushing the truck forward. The roads shone with a cold sheen of rain and streetlights. His reflection in the windshield looked like a man he didn't recognize. Jaw tight, eyes burning, hands clenched around a past that finally refused to stay buried. By the time he reached the hospital, visiting hours were over. Good. He didn't want witnesses. He walked through the empty corridor, his boots echoing down the hall, the air thick with disinfectant and secrets. The ICU nurse was gone. The lights were dim. The world was quiet, except inside him. He pushed open her door. Maya turned her head slightly, wincing at the movement. She looked pale, fragile, stitched together with pain and remorse, but her eyes were awake, haunted, expecting him. "Ryan," she whispered, No. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He held up the folder. Her eyes closed the moment she saw it. "You knew," he said quietly. "You knew who I was. You knew what happened. You knew about Aria. You knew about Eli." She didn't argue. Didn't defend herself. Didn't reach for excuses. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "Say it," he demanded. Maya swallowed with difficulty. Her voice came out like cracked glass. "Yes," she whispered. "I knew." The air left his lungs. For a second, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All the pieces he'd been avoiding clicked together with a final, devastating certainty. "You knew," he repeated, "and you stayed silent." "I tried," she began. "No," he said sharply. "Don't tell me you tried. If you had tried, my brother might still be alive. If you had tried, that driver wouldn't have been hired. If you had tried, my daughter wouldn't have watched her uncle die in my arms." Her tears finally fell. "I couldn't undo it," she whispered, "and I was a coward. I buried the file. I buried the truth. And I've lived with the guilt every day since." Her voice broke completely. "When you pulled me out of that car, I thought I was dying, and I saw your face, and I knew fate had brought me back to answer for everything I ran from." He stared at her, chest tight, hands trembling. "So what?" he asked. "You want forgiveness?" "No," she said immediately. "No, I don't deserve that." She looked directly into his eyes, and for the first time her voice didn't shake. "I want the truth to finally belong to you, not to a file, not to a boardroom, not to me." She took a strained breath. "And there's something else you don't know yet. Something I tried to tell you before the pain shut me down." Ryan's pulse spiked. She lifted a shaking hand toward him. "Ryan," she whispered. And then, She said the one sentence that ripped open the story and changed everything you think you know. They say every story has a final twist, but some twists don't change the ending. They change the meaning. If you're still listening, subscribe, because this is the moment everything turns. Ryan stood frozen, fists clenched at his sides, breath ragged from a truth that had swallowed the air in the room. Maya's voice was thin, trembling, cracking under weight she'd carried alone for too long. "There's something else you don't know," she whispered. He didn't move. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, fingers shaking. "The driver who killed your brother, Marcus Reyes." Her throat tightened and she forced the next words out slowly, painfully. "He wasn't supposed to be behind the wheel that night." Ryan's jaw tensed. "Then who was?" Maya looked up at him, eyes red, voice breaking. "My father." The world snapped into silence. Not shock, not anger, just silence so deep it felt like another kind of fire. "He was drunk," she whispered. "Too drunk to drive, too drunk to stand. And we were leaving a private event, one of those charity nights where rich people pretend to save the world." Her breath came in shallow pulls. "He told Marcus, the logistics driver, to switch seats with him, or he'd lose his job. Marcus panicked. He obeyed. And when the accident happened, my father signed everything. He pulled strings. He hid it all. And I," her voice shattered, "I helped him seal the file. I was young, stupid, afraid of him. And I helped hide the truth." Ryan felt something inside him tear, not loudly, quietly. The way fabric rips after too much strain. "You protected him," Ryan said softly. "No," she whispered. "I destroyed myself. Every day since then, I've lived with the weight of what he did and what I didn't stop." She looked at him, really looked at him, with grief carved into every line of her face. "When the crash happened tonight, when you pulled me out, I thought it was fate giving me the punishment I deserved." He stared at the woman in the hospital bed. This billionaire, this stranger, this broken daughter protecting a monster. And the worst part was, he believed her. Not because he wanted to, but because guilt leaves fingerprints, and hers were everywhere. He stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching something fragile. "Why tell me now?" he asked quietly. "Why tonight?" She held his gaze, tears streaming freely. "Because when you carried me out of that fire, you didn't know who I was. You didn't know what I'd done, and you still chose to save me." Her voice cracked into a whisper. "No one ever saved me from my father. No one ever saved me from the truth, except you." Ryan's throat tightened. She reached for his hand but didn't touch it, just hovered in the air, waiting for permission she didn't deserve. "I know you can't forgive me," she said, "and you shouldn't. But please don't carry this alone anymore. Let the truth be yours." For a moment, just one breath, Ryan saw the girl behind the billionaire, the child who had grown up in shadows, the woman who had buried guilt so deep it had become her heartbeat. And then, a soft voice echoed from the doorway. "Daddy?" Ryan turned. Aria stood there in her little hoodie, holding her stuffed bear, eyes wide and shiny in the dim light. "How come you didn't come home?" she whispered. He blinked hard. "Aria," he said softly, "you're supposed to be with Rosa." Rosa rushed in behind her, apologizing, breathless. "I'm sorry. She insisted She ran out the door." But Aria walked straight past both of them. She went to Maya's bedside, and without hesitation, she gently placed her stuffed bear beside Maya's hand. "I saw your car," she said softly. "The fire scared me. I'm glad my daddy saved you." Maya covered her mouth, sobbing silently. Ryan stood there, heart cracked open in ways he wasn't ready for. Aria turned to him. "Daddy, she looks lonely," she whispered. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, the choice was already made. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, just truth. He stepped to the bed, placed the file on the table beside her, and spoke quietly. "I don't forgive you," he said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." Maya nodded slowly, tears falling. "But," he continued, "I believe you. Her breath trembled. And if you want to make this right, Ryan said, then you start tomorrow. With me, with the police, with your board, with the world. She nodded again, eyes shining with something new. Not relief, responsibility. He exhaled, long and heavy. And Maya, he added softly, almost reluctantly, you don't carry this alone anymore. Maya broke, but it wasn't the breaking of a guilty woman. It was the breaking of someone finally free. For the first time since the night Eli died, the weight shifted. Not lifted, not erased, shifted. Ryan picked up Aria, held her close and whispered into her hair. We're going home. As he walked out, Maya finally breathed without shaking. She touched the stuffed bear, held it like a lifeline, and whispered, thank you for letting me try. Outside, the rain had stopped. The night was quiet. The world was different. And somewhere in that quiet, painful stillness, fate whispered something too. It whispered that sometimes the person you save is the person who finally forces the truth to live in the light. And sometimes that truth saves you back.